All right, welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are doing a complete top to bottom audit of your brain's cognitive architecture. We spend so much time optimizing our apps, our calendars, our workflows, but we rarely stop to debug our own behavioral source code. So let's look under the hood and try to figure out why our internal programming sometimes seems like it's literally designed to make us fail. So, why do you ruin your own progress the exact moment things actually start going well? Seriously, I want you to really think about this for a second. You set this massive, ambitious goal. You go out and buy the fancy planners. You string together 3 amazing days of deep work. And then, boom, you completely derail yourself. You end up cleaning your entire house top to bottom just to avoid writing one single email. Usually, you just end up feeling like you lack discipline, right? But what if your inability to stay on track has absolutely nothing to do with willpower? Okay, let's dive into this. Because for years, we've been sold this total myth that procrastination is just a time management issue, or even worse, some sort of moral failing. We're constantly told we just need to try harder. But the reality? The reality is entirely different. Procrastination is actually a structural defense mechanism. It's a highly evolved, deeply ingrained safety feature hardwired right into your brain's software. So your brain isn't broken. It's just, well, running a kind of outdated antivirus program. To really get this, we need to anchor ourselves in a bit of behavioral science, specifically a critical concept called ego preservation. Basically, this is your subconscious psychological mechanism for protecting your self-worth and your identity from perceived threats. And to your ego, true failure is the ultimate threat. When you sit down to tackle a massive project, your ego instantly goes on high alert. So procrastination isn't laziness at all. It is actually your ego actively deploying a shield to protect you from the psychological pain of potentially giving it your absolute all and still falling short. And man, that brings us right to that intense internal tug-of-war we all know so well, cognitive dissonance. This is the acute mental discomfort you experience when you hold contradictory beliefs. On the one hand, you desperately want to succeed. But on the other hand, you are absolutely terrified of finding out your best effort might not actually be good enough. Your brain hates this discomfort. It despises it. It wants to resolve this dissonance immediately. And the absolute fastest way to relieve that pressure isn't doing the hard work. It's distracting yourself. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what's happening behind the scenes. Let's walk through this self-sabotage loop to see how your brain unconsciously completely dismantles your momentum. Step 1. You set a high-stakes goal. Step 2. The fear of true failure triggers a massive alarm in your head. Step 3. The procrastination shield is deployed, and suddenly alphabetizing your spice rack feels like a life-or-death emergency. Finally, step 4. The ego is saved. You successfully avoided the terrifying test of your true abilities. It's honestly a perfectly executed subconscious defense strategy. What's honestly fascinating here is the sheer math your ancient brain is doing. You have to remember, you're operating on hardware designed for survival, not for modern ambition. To your brain, achievement represents an unknown outcome. It's risky, it's dangerous, but predictability? Predictability feels incredibly safe, even if it results in a known failure. Think about it. If you don't study and you fail a test, the outcome was 100% predictable. Because predictability equals survival in the wild, your brain actively prioritizes a safe, known failure over the terrifying uncertainty of achievement. Now, you might be wondering, if this ego preservation loop has existed in humans literally forever, why does it feel so much worse today? Why are we all struggling to focus right now? Well, we have to look at how our modern environment interacts with this structural defense mechanism. Because right now, we are experiencing a collective cognitive system crash. Our current environment is actively and heavily exacerbating our brain's tendency to deploy that procrastination shield. The clinical data actually points to one massive culprit here: information fatigue. We are constantly, relentlessly bombarded with alerts from screens, texts, and endless scrolling feeds. Now, our brains do have a natural filtering system to figure out what's important, but the sheer volume of modern media completely and utterly overloads that filter. When your cognitive RAM is constantly depleted just by existing in a digital world, your vulnerability to distraction absolutely skyrockets. You literally have zero mental energy left to fight off the ego's urge to procrastinate. So how do you actually know if you're in the middle of a system crash? Well, here is the telemetry you can use to self-diagnose. These are the clinical symptoms of cognitive overload and focus loss. If you are experiencing brain fog, increased anxiety, an inability to remember things that literally just happened, making careless errors, or just a profound, heavy lack of mental energy, this isn't just you needing another cup of coffee. This is your brain buckling under the weight of information fatigue. And when your brain is this fatigued, that procrastination shield, it just becomes your default state. So, the absolutely crucial point here is summed up perfectly. If you don't fully deploy your effort, failure doesn't feel like a reflection of your actual ability. Read that again. I mean, wow, this is the ultimate masterstroke of the ego. If you wait until the night before to start a huge project and it turns out poorly, well, you have a built-in excuse, don't you? You can tell yourself, well, I didn't really try my best anyway. The ego vastly prefers a guaranteed failure born of inaction over a potential failure despite your absolute maximum effort. It's a genius, albeit completely destructive, psychological trick. All right, so we've diagnosed the bug, right? We understand the behavioral science of exactly why we self-sabotage and how our overwhelming digital environment makes it 10 times worse. But how do we actually fix the glitch? Let's shift gears from diagnosing the problem to offering the systemic solution. It is time to debug your behavioral source code and bypass this psychological shield for good. The real key to bypassing this defense mechanism is a fundamental shift in how you operate. You need to move away from a goal-oriented mindset and adopt what we call a systems-oriented identity. See, when you obsess over a massive goal, like, say, writing a best-selling novel, your brain perceives that giant unknown outcome as a threat and immediately deploys the shield. Instead, try focusing purely on the daily system. I am a person who writes for 30 minutes every morning. By removing the pressure of that massive final outcome and focusing only on an immediate, super low-stakes routine, you slip right past your ego's radar. Which brings us to our final thought today. I want to leave you with a bit of a challenge for the very next time you feel that urge to pull out your phone instead of doing your work. Stop, look at your own behavioral telemetry, and ask yourself this one simple question. What exactly is my ego trying to hide from right now? Once you realize that procrastination is really just your brain trying to protect you from the fear of giving it your all, you take your power back. You are no longer a victim to laziness. You are an engineer debugging your own focus. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive in The Explainer. Take these insights, apply the systems, and I'll see you next time.